कम्युनिटी जो सदियों से लोहा पिघला रही है कंप्लीटली विदाउट मॉडर्न टेक्नोलॉजी। या सोचो एक ऐसी ट्राइब जो चावल के खेतों में ही मछलियां भी उगा लेती है, एक परफेक्ट सेल्फ सस्टेनिंग इकोसिस्टम। वेलकम टू द डीप डाइव दोस्त। इंडिया में 705 से ज्यादा रिकग्नाइज्ड शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब्स हैं और हर एक की अपनी यूनिक कहानी है। आज हम इसी इनक्रेडिबल वर्ल्ड को एक्सप्लोर करेंगे, बट इस अमेजिंग जर्नी पे आगे बढ़ने से पहले एक छोटा सा काम कर दो। जल्दी से सब्सक्राइब बटन, लाइक और नोटिफिकेशन बेल ऑन कर लो। और हाँ, कमेंट में बताओ आपने किस ट्राइबल आर्ट या कल्चर के बारे में सुना है। लेट्स मेक दिस इंटरैक्टिव।
बिल्कुल, एंड यू नीड टू बी रेडी बिकॉज आज का हमारा सफर काफी लंबा और डिटेल्ड होने वाला है। वी आर गोइंग टू कवर अ मैसिव अमाउंट ऑफ ग्राउंड, एक्सप्लोरिंग द इनक्रेडिबल डाइवर्सिटी ऑफ इंडियाज ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज।
यस, तो हेre's our लर्निंग मैप फॉर टुडे। गेट रेडी फॉर एन एपिक सेशन। हम शुरू करेंगे झारखंड के आर्टिजन ट्राइब से, फिर समझेंगे ILO कन्वेंशन 169 और इंडिया का स्टैंड। उसके बाद अपतानी ट्राइब के माइंड ब्लोइंग एग्रीकल्चरल प्रैक्टिसेस को देखेंगे। नेक्स्ट, इंडिया के अलग अलग रीजन्स में ट्राइब्स का डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन और उनके इंस्टीट्यूशनल फीचर्स को मैप करेंगे। फिर हम शिफ्टिंग कल्टिवेशन के लाइवलीहुड और एनवायरनमेंट के बैलेंस पर बात करेंगे। हम ट्राइब और इंडियन सेंसस के कॉन्सेप्ट को भी डिकोड करेंगे। इसके बाद ट्राइबल लैंग्वेजेस का क्लासिफिकेशन और पैस्टोरल कम्युनिटीज के चैलेंजेस को समझेंगे। हम अंडमान आइलैंड्स के ट्राइब्स की यूनिक दुनिया में भी जाएंगे और फिर ट्राइब वर्सेस शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब का डिफरेंस क्लियर करेंगे। हम यूथ डॉमेट्री के फैसिनेटिंग इंस्टीट्यूशन को भी स्टडी करेंगे। इसके बाद डिफरेंट एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट द्वारा दी गई इकोनॉमिक टाइपोलॉजी को कंपेयर और कॉन्ट्रास्ट करेंगे और एंड करेंगे इंडियन ट्राइब्स की बायोजेनेटिक वेरिएबिलिटी के साथ।
It's a marathon, not a sprint. So I hope everyone is ready with their notes and a curious mind.
Absolutely. Let's dive right in. Okay, let's unpack our first topic. This is from 2024. Question: Artisan tribes of Jharkhand. 10M 2024. Broad micro theme: socio-cultural and economic significance, types and challenges of artisan tribal communities in Jharkhand.
Fantastic starting point. सोचो, इन आर्टिजन ट्राइब्स को, ये वो कम्युनिटीज हैं जो अपने ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज और लोकल रिसोर्सेज का इस्तेमाल करके यूनिक क्राफ्ट्स बनाते हैं। इट्स अ परफेक्ट फ्यूजन ऑफ कल्चर एंड इकोलॉजी। मतलब पर्यावरण के संतुलन के साथ जीने की एक जीती जागती मिसाल है।
That sounds amazing. But when you say artisan tribes, what exactly do you mean? Is it just a hobby or is it their entire identity?
Great question. It's their identity. Imagine the Asur tribe, who have been involved in iron smelting, यानी लोहा पिघलाने का काम, since ancient times. या the Karmali tribe, जो मिट्टी से सुंदर बर्तन बनाते हैं। ये सिर्फ उनका काम नहीं, it's their heritage. इनकी कला सिर्फ एक प्रोडक्ट नहीं, बल्कि उनके एनवायरनमेंट के साथ उनके रिश्ते का एक अस्तित्व है। वो जमीन से ही अपनी पहचान करते हैं।
So for an answer, how should we start? What's the best introduction?
The introduction should set the context by highlighting that these tribes are a living example of the harmonious relationship between culture and ecology. You should state that they are a critical part of Jharkhand's cultural heritage, representing a blend of traditional knowledge and ecological sustainability.
Got it. Let's move to the body of the answer. कौन-कौन से main artisan groups हैं झारखंड में?
The body should have three clear parts. First, the key groups and their craft specializations. The prominent groups हैं Asur tribe, famous for iron smelting. Then you have the Karmali for pottery, and the Birhor for basketry and rope making from local fibers. Notice the pattern. Asur लोहे से, Karmali मिट्टी से, Birhor बांस से. ये सब प्रकृति के सबसे बुनियादी तत्व हैं. Anthropologist N.K. Bose pointed out that the Birhor using local bamboo is a perfect example of sustainable practice.
Let me ask a structuring question here. Answer में specific tribe names Asur, Karmali mention करना क्यों important है? Can't we just talk generally?
Absolutely not. Specific examples make your answer concrete and show the examiner that you have read the topic deeply. Generic points से marks नहीं मिलते दोस्त. It shows you've gone beyond the surface and you understand the nuances.
Right. So that's the first part of the body. What's the second part?
The second part is the socio-cultural dimension. ये crafts उनके society से कैसे जुड़े हैं? They are an integral part of their social structure. For example, among the Mahali tribe, bamboo craft work is based on a gendered division of labor, a point observed by S.C. Roy. The Karmali pottery is indispensable in religious ceremonies, which reinforces communal solidarity, a concept Emil Durkheim would appreciate.
You mentioned something really interesting in the notes. The gift economy. That sounds complex. How does that fit in?
एक बहुत दिलचस्प बात है. The Asur iron tools historically functioned within what Marcel Mauss called a gift economy. इसका मतलब वो हमेशा पैसों के लिए नहीं बिकते थे. अक्सर वो एक दूसरे को तोहफे में दिए जाते थे या शादी ब्याह में. इससे रिश्ते मजबूत होते थे. It's less about what's the price and more about what's our relationship. This adds a deeper analytical layer to your answer.
That's a powerful idea. Now for the third part of the body. I'm guessing it's not all smooth sailing. ये सुनने में तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है, पर क्या ये आज भी practical है? What challenges are they facing?
Exactly. The biggest challenge is competition from mass-produced goods. This directly threatens the livelihoods of tribes like the Asur, as J.C. Roy pointed out. दूसरा बड़ा issue है youth migration. Young people are moving to cities for work, leading to a loss of traditional knowledge. Warrior Elvin argued this causes cultural erosion.
So another structural question. Why is it better to discuss the socio-cultural dimension before the challenges?
Simple logic है. पहले आप उनकी importance establish करते हो, फिर बताते हो कि वो importance खतरे में क्यों है. You establish the value, then you highlight the threat. अपनी बात को इस तरह से रखना बहुत असरदार होता है. It creates a logical narrative flow.
Makes perfect sense. So, for the conclusion, how do we tie it all together?
The conclusion should reiterate the central theme, that these artisan tribes exemplify the harmonious relationship between culture and ecology. But you must add that focused interventions are necessary to address market exploitation and knowledge transfer challenges to ensure their survival and continuity.
Fantastic. So if I have to remember this, it's introduction sets the stage, body covers groups, socio-cultural importance and challenges, and the conclusion calls for action. Now, pause and practice saying Asur for iron, Karmali for pottery, Birhar for basketry.
Rehearse this.
In short, Jharkhand's artisan tribes are a beautiful fusion of culture, ecology, and economy, but they need our support to survive and thrive. Next up, एक बहुत important international treaty. The question is from 2024. Question: describe ILO's Convention number 169, 1989 on indigenous and tribal people. Is India a signatory to it? 2024 10M Broad Micro Team. ILO Convention number 169, 1989 on indigenous and tribal peoples and India's official position.
Right. ILOC 169 is basically the most important international law for the rights of indigenous and tribal people. It's a landmark treaty that focuses on self-determination, land rights, and cultural preservation. It's all about respecting tribal autonomy.
Can you give me a simple analogy to make it stick?
Zarur. Imagine C-169 is a rule book for a country. This rule book says that you cannot enter someone's house and start changing their furniture without asking them first. Yahan ghar is the land and culture of tribal people, and the furniture represents their resources and way of life. Simple, na?
That's a great way to put it. So, for the answer, how should we structure the body? What are the key provisions of this rule book?
The body should have two main parts. First, the key provisions of C-169. There are four major ones to remember. 1. It recognizes their rights to ancestral land and resources. 2. It gives them the right to self-identification. मतलब वो खुद decide करेंगे कि वो indigenous हैं या नहीं. This is revolutionary.
Wait, why is self-identification so revolutionary? पहले कौन decide करता था?
Pehle, the state or the government would decide who gets classified as a tribe. This principle shifts that power from the state to the community itself. It's a major shift in power dynamics. So that's the second provision. The third is that governments must consult with them before adopting any measures that affect them. And finally, it guarantees cultural preservation and non-discrimination.
That sounds very comprehensive. So this brings us to the second part of the answer body, the million-dollar question. क्या इंडिया ने इस पर साइन किया है?
The short answer is no. India has not ratified ILO Convention No. 169. हमने पुराने वाले C-107 from 1957 को ratify किया था, which was much more assimilationist in its approach.
So just to be clear, what's the main difference between C-107 and C-169, in simple words?
C-107 had an integration approach, as if tribal people should just assimilate into mainstream society. C-169 has a consultation and participation approach, which respects their unique identity and gives them a voice. It's a shift from a top-down to a bottom-up philosophy.
But why hasn't India ratified the new one? What are the reasons?
इसके कई reasons हैं. One is sovereignty concerns, a hesitation in granting such extensive self-governance rights. Second, the convention's provisions go beyond India's existing laws, so there are policy conflicts. Plus, India officially avoids the term indigenous peoples and prefers the constitutional category of scheduled tribes.
Why does India avoid the term indigenous?
India's official stand is that after British rule, the entire population is considered indigenous. So giving this label to just one group could be seen as divisive. Iske bajay, we use the constitutional term scheduled tribes, which is a specific legal and administrative category.
So for the conclusion, how do we wrap this up? If India hasn't ratified it, what's the alternative?
Okay, conclusion should mention that while India has not ratified C-169, it uses domestic safeguards like the PASA Act of 1996 and the Forest Rights Act of 2006. However, ratifying C-169 would provide greater autonomy and justice for tribal populations. It's important to mention PASA and FRA to show you understand the Indian context. It makes the answer more nuanced.
Got it. Okay, this is a key takeaway. Now pause and practice saying, India has not ratified ILO Convention 169 due to sovereignty and policy concerns, but it relies on domestic laws like PESA and the Forest Rights Act. Practice it.
In short, ILO C-169 is the global benchmark for tribal rights, but India relies on its domestic laws and has not yet ratified this convention.
अब चलते हैं North East India, the Zero Valley in Arunachal Pradesh. यहाँ से 2024 का एक question है.
Question?
Agricultural practices of the Apatani, 10M 2024. Broad micro theme. Ecologically sustainable and culturally rooted agricultural practices of the Apatani tribe.
The Apatani, they are the superstars of agriculture. Unka system itna efficient or sustainable hai that it has even been considered for recognition as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
That's a huge claim. Can you explain their system with a story or an analogy?
Of course. Imagine a multi-level apartment building. Sabse upar, terrace par aap chawal uga rahe ho. The water flows down. On the ground floor, you've built a small pond where you're farming fish. The water and nutrients from the rice fields feed the fish, and the fish waste fertilizes the fields. The Apatani have been doing this for centuries. This is known as integrated rice fish farming. It's pure genius.
That is an amazing system. So, In an answer, how do we break this down? What are their core techniques?
The body should have two parts. First, the core agricultural techniques. You must mention three things.
Huh.
One, terraced wet rice cultivation. वो पहाड़ों पर steps या terraces बनाकर खेती करते हैं.
ठीक.
Two, their sophisticated community-based canal irrigation system, a point noted by T.N. Madan. And three, the star of the show, the integrated rice fish farming. This last term is the key word. इसके बिना answer incomplete है.
Okay, so terraces, irrigation, and rice fish farming. What's the second part of the body? How is this system so sustainable?
The second part is about sustainability and social organization. Simple है. वो कोई chemical inputs use नहीं करते. They rely entirely on organic manure. इससे minimal environmental impact होता है. Socially भी ये important है. Agricultural activities promote communal work and cohesion. उनके festivals, जैसे Mayoko, are deeply intertwined with the farming cycle.
Mentioning the Mayoko festival seems like a great way to add a socio-cultural dimension, right? It shows that their agriculture is not just an economic activity.
Precisely. It shows it's an integral part of their culture and religion. It adds depth. You can also add that they use organic manure, not just no chemical inputs, to be more specific and impactful. छोटी-छोटी details matter करती हैं.
So how do we conclude this answer? How do we link it to a broader anthropological concept for maximum impact?
The best way to conclude is by linking it to Julian Stewart's concept of cultural ecology. The Apatani system exemplifies this by perfectly balancing high productivity with conservation. And for contemporary relevance, you must mention that sustained efforts are vital to protect this model from modern challenges like climate change.
Why is mentioning anthropologists like T.N. Madan or Julian Stewart so important in these answers?
It gives your answer an academic foundation. It shows you aren't just stating facts, you are connecting them to establish anthropological concepts. It gives your answer weight and authority.
Great advice. Okay, listener, ab tumhari bari. Now pause and practice saying a 30-second explanation of Apatani agriculture. Focus on terraces and integrated rice fish farming. Go on, rehearse.
In short, Apatani agriculture is a genius model of cultural ecology, perfectly balancing high productivity with sustainability.
Okay, अब zoom out करते हैं और पूरे इंडिया को देखते हैं. ये 2023 का 20 marker है, so it's a big one. Question. Discuss the distribution of tribes in different geographical regions of India. Identify the distinct institutional features of tribal societies of these regions. 20M 2023. Broad micro theme, geographical distribution, and distinct institutional features, kinship, economy, polity of tribal societies in India.
Right. This question is a map of India's tribal diversity. For a 20 marker like this, the introduction needs a solid data hook. For instance, according to the census of 2011, India is home to 705 recognized scheduled tribes, which constitute 8.6% of the total population. This sets the stage perfectly.
A data hook? I like that. 8.6% of the population. So how are they distributed?
These tribes are traditionally distributed across 6 distinct geographical zones. And what's fascinating is that each zone has its own unique institutional features. The body of the answer should discuss these zones one by one. Let's start with the central Indian region.
Central India? You mean Jharkhand, Odisha, etc.? क्या सीन है वहाँ?
Exactly. यहाँ Santhal, Munda, and Oraon जैसे tribes predominate. Their kinship system is based on strong exogenous clans known as Kili. Their religion is predominantly animistic, worshipping nature deities like Singbonga. And a very important social institution here is the youth dormitory, like the Dhumkuria among the Oraons.
And what about the famous Northeast? That region is known for its unique cultures.
Absolutely. The northeastern region has groups like the Khasi and Garo, who exhibit distinct matrilineal societies. The economy heavily relies on jhum cultivation or shifting agriculture. And the political organization often involves chieftainship, like the Angs among the Naga.
You said matrilineal. Can you quickly explain the difference between matrilineal and patrilineal for our listeners?
Simple. In matrilineal societies, descent and inheritance are traced through the mother's side, like the Khasi. In patrilineal societies, it's traced through the father's side, which is more common globally, like the Apatani we just discussed.
Got it. Moving on to the Himalayan region.
In the Himalayan region, you find tribes like the Apatani and Munpa. They generally follow patrilineal descent. Their economy is a mix of agro-pastoralism. And political affairs are often managed by traditional councils, such as the Nyadar Namlo among the Apatani.
And finally, the southern and island regions.
In southern India, you have tribes like the Toda of the Nilgiris, who are pastoralists. In the Andaman Islands, you find isolated tribes like the Sentinelese and Jarawa. They maintain egalitarian kinship structures, and their economy is based purely on hunting-gathering.
For a big question like this, would making a table be a good idea for presentation?
An excellent idea. A table comparing the region, kinship, economy, and political organization would make your answer incredibly structured and easy to read. Smart presentation is key for maximum marks. For a 20 marker, you need to balance both depth and breadth, and a table does that beautifully.
And to conclude an answer this vast, how do we tie it to policy?
The perfect way to conclude is to connect it to the Indian Constitution. Mention that understanding these diverse institutional features is vital for formulating culturally sensitive policies that respect the autonomy granted under the 5th and 6th schedules. It shows you understand the practical implications.
Okay, a quick memory game for everyone. Now pause and practice saying the matches. Khasi with Northeast, Toda with South, Santhal with Central. Practice it.
In short, India's tribal distribution shows amazing adaptation to different environments with unique social, economic, and political systems in each region.
Now for a question that's a classic debate. from 2022. Question. How can a balance be struck between livelihood concern and environmental degradation in the context of shifting cultivation? 15M 2022. Broad micro-theme, Balancing Livelihood Security and Environmental Conservation in Shifting Cultivation, JUM.
Shifting cultivation, or jhum, is a very contentious topic. On one hand, it's a traditional agricultural system crucial for the food security and cultural identity of many indigenous communities. On the other hand, it's blamed for deforestation and soil erosion. The key is finding a balance.
So it's not about banning it, but reforming it. How do we do that? Let's start with the ecological side. What are some sustainable practices?
Exactly. For the ecological side, you can suggest three things. First, promote longer fallow periods. This allows the soil to regenerate. Second, introduce integrated systems, like the Tangya system, which combines tree planting with shifting cultivation. Third, encourage multi-cropping to lessen the frequency of slash and burn.
That makes sense. But what about the livelihood part? People need to earn a living. You can't just tell them to wait for the soil to regenerate.
That's the other side of the coin. The answer must address this. You need to focus on livelihood diversification and policy support. For instance, promoting ecotourism or sustainable harvesting of non-timber forest products can provide alternative income. Also, institutional support through schemes like the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, NMSA, can offer incentives for adopting sustainable farming.
And what about the rights of the communities themselves? They have been doing this for generations.
This is the most crucial part of the answer. You must emphasize strengthening community rights and participation. This means ensuring the full implementation of the Forest Rights Act, FRA, of 2006. This act secures community rights over forests and empowers them in sustainable resource management. Engaging them through models like joint forest management, JFM, is also key.
So the conclusion should be about a participatory model, not a top-down one.
Like the Garo and Khasi.
This structure is very clear. Let's practice the core idea. Now pause and practice saying this. The balance for shifting cultivation lies in longer fallow periods, livelihood diversification, and strengthening community rights through the Forest Rights Act. Rehearse that thought.
In short, balancing jhum cultivation means integrating traditional knowledge with modern sustainable practices, supported by strong community rights and alternative livelihood options.
Moving on to a fundamental concept. From 2021. Question. Concept of tribe and Indian census, 10M 2021. Broad micro-theme, definition, characteristics, and enumeration challenges of tribes in the Indian census context.
This is a foundational question. The term tribe itself is an anthropological concept, referring to a social group organized on kinship, with a common territory, language, and culture. But the Indian context is unique.
How so? How does the Indian context change this definition?
Post-independence, the Indian constitution replaced colonial labels with a recognized legal and administrative category, scheduled tribes, STs. So, you have the general concept of a tribe and the specific constitutional category of a scheduled tribe. This distinction is the core of the answer.
So how should the body of the answer be structured to explain this?
The body should have three parts. First, explain the core features of a tribe in the anthropological sense: cultural distinctiveness, geographical isolation, subsistence economies, like the Santals or Todas. Second, explain how the Indian census handles this by using the scheduled tribe category defined by the Lokur Committee in 1965. Mention the data point, 104 million or 8.6% of the population in 2011.
And the third part, what are the challenges in the census process?
The third part must discuss the challenges. The enumeration process faces issues like the exclusion or misclassification of many groups. There is often inadequate data on particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTGs. Plus, many indigenous languages are not properly represented.
So why is the census data so important despite these challenges? How should we conclude?
The conclusion must highlight the importance. This data is crucial for policy formulation. It enables the government to fund targeted schemes like the Tribal Subplan, TSP, and to ensure the protection of rights under laws like the PESA Act. Accurate data leads to effective policy.
Practice time. Now pause and practice saying this. A tribe is an anthropological concept, while a scheduled tribe is a constitutional category used in the Indian census for policy purposes. Get that distinction clear.
In short, the concept of a tribe is defined by cultural traits, while the Indian census uses the scheduled tribe category for policy and welfare, despite facing enumeration challenges.
Let's dive into the incredible linguistic diversity. From 2021. Question. Elucidate the linguistic classification of Indian tribes. 15M 2021. Broad micro-theme, linguistic classification and characteristics of Indian tribal societies.
This is a fascinating area. Indian tribal languages are broadly classified into four major families, as established by anthropologist L.P. Vidyarthi and Binay Kumar Rai. These are the Indo-European, Dravidian, Dravida, Austroasiatic, Nishada, and Tibeto-Chinese, Kirata language families. The answer should explain each one.
Four big families. Let's start with the most ancient one, the Austroasiatic family.
Right. The Austroasiatic or Nishada family is considered one of the most ancient in India. Key languages include Santhali, Mundari, and Ho, spoken by tribes like the Munda and Santhal in central India.
And what about the Dravidian family? Isn't that mostly in South India?
While it's primarily in the south, many tribal groups in central India also speak Dravidian languages. Significant tribal tongues include Gondi and Kui, spoken by tribes like the Gond and Kond.
Okay, that leaves two more families, Indo-Aryan and Tibeto-Burman.
Correct. The Indo-Aryan family is the largest linguistic group in India, but has relatively few tribal languages, like Bhili. This reflects a history of assimilation. The Tibeto-Burman, or Kirata, family is linked to migrations from East Asia and includes the diverse tonal languages spoken by tribes like the Naga and Mizo in the northeast.
But I imagine these languages are facing a lot of challenges today. Should we mention that?
Absolutely. The answer must include the challenges. One is multilingualism, and sadly, many languages are critically endangered, as documented in UNESCO's Atlas. This makes documentation efforts by scholars like Anvita Abi incredibly urgent.
So for the conclusion, why is preserving these languages so important?
Because tribal languages offer profound insights into cultural identity, historical migrations, and ecological adaptations. Preserving this linguistic diversity is crucial for maintaining India's pluralistic heritage. Each language is a window into a unique worldview.
Let's practice the four families. Now pause and practice saying them. Austro-Asiatic, Dravidian, Indo-Aryan, and Tibeto-Burman. Try to link a tribe to each.
In short, Indian tribal languages fall into four major families, each telling a unique story of migration and cultural history, but many are now facing the threat of extinction.
Now let's talk about communities that are always on the move. From 2021, question. Discuss the problems faced by pastoral communities in India. 15M, 2021. Broad micro-theme. Economic, environmental, and policy challenges faced by pastoral communities in India.
Pastoral communities like the Gujjars, Bakarwals, Raikas, and Gaddis rely on livestock and seasonal migration, but they are facing immense challenges today. The answer needs to break down these problems systematically.
Okay, what are the main environmental and economic constraints?
The biggest one is the loss of grazing lands due to industrialization, urbanization, and agricultural expansion. For example, traditional grazing commons in Rajasthan, known as orans, have been encroached upon.
And what about forests? Aren't they traditional grazing routes?
Yes, but they face restricted access to forests. Conservation laws like the Wildlife Protection Act often restrict their traditional routes. The Maldharis in the Gir forest face restrictions to protect the Asiatic lion. On top of this, you have the impact of climate change.
That sounds like a perfect storm of problems. How does this affect their livelihood security? Should this be a separate point?
Yes, definitely. This leads to huge insecurity. Modernization marginalizes their traditional practices. The Raikas of Rajasthan, who are camel herders, face declining demand for camels. This also leads to conflict over resources with settled agriculturalists and eventually cultural erosion.
Is there a policy gap here? Is that another key point to discuss?
A very important point. There is a significant inadequate policy framework. Schemes like the National Livestock Mission often fail to address the specific needs of migratory pastoralists. Even the implementation of the Forest Rights Act often overlooks their nomadic requirements.
So the conclusion should call for better policies.
Precisely. Addressing their challenges requires targeted interventions, including legally securing their traditional grazing rights and formulating culturally sensitive policies.
Let's practice remembering some of these communities. Now pause and practice saying Gujjars and Bakarwals in the north, Raikas in the west, Maldharis in Gir. Associate them with their regions.
In short, India's pastoral communities are facing a crisis due to shrinking grazing lands, restrictive forest laws, climate change, and inadequate policies, threatening their very existence.
From the mainland, let's travel to the islands. From 2019, question. Tribes of the Andaman Islands, 10M, 2019, broad micro-theme, distinctive cultural features, subsistence patterns, and social organization of tribes of the Andaman Islands.
The tribes of the Andaman Islands are incredibly unique. They are classified into two groups, the Negrito groups, Jarawas, Sentinelese, Onges, and the Mongoloid groups, Nicobares. The answer should focus on the Negrito groups as they are more distinct.
Let's talk about their economy and material culture. How do they survive?
Their subsistence is predominantly based on hunting, fishing, and gathering. The Jarawas and Onges use bows, arrows, and harpoons. The Sentinelese show an exceptional adaptation to marine ecosystems. They are incredibly efficient in using locally sourced materials, a fact documented by anthropologist T.N. Pandit.
And what about their social structure and rituals?
Their social organization is marked by egalitarianism with no rigid hierarchy. Brian Morris documented communal sharing among the Onges. Their religious beliefs are centered on animism and shamanism. Their settlements consist of mobile shelters, an adaptation to the climate noted by Radcliffe Brown.
The Sentinelese are particularly famous for their isolation. That must be mentioned, right?
Absolutely. Tribes like the Sentinelese actively resist contact, maintaining a fierce isolation. In stark contrast, a tribe like the Great Andamanese has experienced significant cultural dilution due to prolonged contact. This contrast is a key point.
So, the conclusion is all about protection.
Exactly. The conclusion must state that protecting the heritage and their very lives hinges on strict adherence to policies of minimal interference and ethical governance.
Time to practice? Now pause and practice saying the names of the two main groups. Negrito groups, like the Jarvas and Sentinelese, and Mongoloid groups, like the Nicobarese. Rehearse it.
In short, the tribes of the Andaman Islands, particularly the isolated Negrito groups, represent a unique, egalitarian, hunter-gatherer way of life that requires stringent protectionist policies to survive.
Back to another foundational concept. A 10 marker from 2018. Question. Tribe and Scheduled Tribe 10M 2018. Broad micro theme. Definition, characteristics, differences, and legal status of tribe versus scheduled tribe in India.
We touched upon this earlier, but this question demands a direct comparison. The concept of a tribe is an anthropological term. Marshall Salins defined them as systems organized around kinship. On the other hand, scheduled tribe is a constitutional and administrative category specific to India, created for affirmative action. The answer must clearly separate these two.
Okay, let's look at tribe from the anthropological perspective first.
Tribes are characterized by geographical isolation, like the Jaravas, a subsistence economy, like the Todas, and kinship as the primary organizing principle. They generally lack centralized governance.
Now, contrast that with scheduled tribe. What makes it a constitutional category?
STs are socio-economic groups identified under Article 366(25) of the Constitution. The criteria include primitive traits and economic backwardness. Unlike the global concept of tribe, ST is specific to India and carries legal recognition with special safeguards.
What kind of safeguards are we talking about?
STs are entitled to protection under the 5th and 6th schedules and laws such as the PISA Act and the Forest Rights Act. This includes political representation and reservations.
So, the core difference is academic versus legal. How do we conclude this?
Exactly. The conclusion is that tribe is a descriptive academic concept, while scheduled tribe is a prescriptive legal category that provides a constitutional framework for addressing historical marginalization.
Practice cue time. Now, pause the audio and practice saying this in one sentence. Tribe is how we study them. Scheduled tribe is how the Constitution protects them. Practice saying that.
In short, a tribe is an anthropological concept based on kinship and culture, while a scheduled tribe is a specific constitutional category in India that provides legal safeguards and affirmative action.
Let's explore a fascinating social institution. From 2018. Question. Youth's Dormitory as an Institution. 10M 2018. Broad microtheme. Definition, structure, functions, and contemporary relevance of the Youth Dormitory Institution in tribal societies.
Tribal youth dormitories are indigenous community spaces for young, unmarried members of the tribe. T.C. Hudson called them the survival of communal houses. They are basically traditional centers for training and cultural transmission.
What are the different types, and how are they structured?
They are classified based on membership. You have dormitories for boys, like the Murung of the Konyak Naga, for girls, like the Yo of the Konyak Naga, and joint dormitories, like the famous Ghutul of the Murya Gonds, studied by Verrier Elwin. S.C. Roy studied the Dhumkurya of the Oraon. They are usually built on the outskirts of the village.
What are their functions? What do young people learn there?
They serve multiple functions. They educate youth in dancing, music, and folklore. They function as a cooperative labor unit for the village, and they also regulate premarital relationships. In a way, they are similar to the ancient Brahmacharya ashram system.
But are they still relevant today? What is their contemporary status?
That's the key point for the conclusion. While their prevalence has declined due to modernization and formal education, they remain an important symbol of tribal social organization. In some communities, they still play a crucial role in retaining indigenous cultural knowledge.
Let's practice some names. Now, pause and practice saying. The Ghotul of the Murya Gonds and the Murung of the Konyak Naga. Rehearse these examples.
In short, the youth dormitory is a traditional tribal institution for educating the young in cultural practices, social norms, and community life, though its role has diminished with modernization.
Now for a more theoretical question. A 20 marker from 2018. Question. Compare and contrast the economic typology of tribes given by different anthropologists. 20M, 2018. Broad microtheme. Economic typologies of tribes proposed by anthropologists based on subsistence, exchange, and environment.
This is a classic question. Anthropologists have proposed various economic typologies to classify tribes. The answer needs to compare and contrast these different models.
Okay, let's start with some of the early ecology-based typologies.
A.L. Kroeber classified economies into 4 linear stages based on subsistence: hunting and gathering, fishing, pastoralism, and agriculture. It's a clear model, but criticized for being too simplistic. Then you have Julian Stewart, who introduced cultural ecology, emphasizing adaptation to the environment.
So, Kroeber was linear. Stewart was about adaptation. What about other perspectives?
Others focused on exchange in culture. Paul Bohannon categorized economies based on their exchange systems: reciprocity, redistribution, and market exchange. Melville Huskowitz focused on motivation, classifying economies as subsistence, prestige, and market economies.
How do these global models apply to the Indian context?
This is where S.C. Dubey comes in. He provided a classification specific to India, including forest-based, agricultural, and industrial economies, like tribals working in Jharkhand's coal mines.
So to compare and contrast them, what are the key differences?
Kroeber's model is static. In contrast, Dubey and Stewart's are more dynamic. Bohannon and Huskowitz prioritize social dimensions, while Kroeber and Dubey emphasize economic activities. The focus shifts from what they do to why they do it or how they exchange it.
So which model is the best? How to conclude?
The conclusion is that no single model is universally applicable. A comprehensive approach is needed, one that integrates Kroeber's ecological categories with Bohannon's focus on exchange and Dubé's India-specific context.
Time to practice the big names. Now, pause and practice saying Kroeber subsistence stages, Stewart cultural ecology, Bohannon exchange systems, Dubé Indian context.
Rehearse.
In short, anthropological economic typologies range from ecological, Kroeber, Stewart, to cultural, Bohannon, Herskovits, with India-specific models, Dubé, providing a crucial local context.
And for our final question, we're going deep into the biological level. From 2016. Question. Biogenetic variability of Indian tribes 10M, 2016. Broad micro-theme. Biogenetic variability, evolutionary history, and cultural influence on Indian tribal genetics.
This is a fascinating topic where culture and biology intersect. The biogenetic variability of Indian tribes reflects a complex history of migrations, ecological adaptations, and cultural practices. It's like a genetic map of South Asia's deep history.
What are the main factors that create this variability? Three big factors. First, geographical barriers and strong endogamous practices, marrying within the community, which created isolated gene pools. Second, multiple waves of migration. And third, genetic adaptations to the environment, like resistance to malaria due to sickle cell traits seen among the Santhals.
Can we see this in specific genetic markers?
Absolutely. Tribal genetic diversity often aligns with their linguistic affiliations. For example, Munda-speaking tribes, who belong to the Austroasiatic family, predominantly exhibit the O2A haplogroup, linking them to ancient Southeast Asian populations.
What about the Andamanese tribes? They are famously isolated.
Their genetics are unique. The Andamanese tribes, like the Ong and Jarva, carry unique haplogroups M31 and M32. These represent some of the most ancient human lineages, reflecting their long history of isolation.
Does this genetic isolation have any negative consequences?
Yes, due to endogamy, certain tribes are predisposed to specific genetic disorders. A classic example is the high prevalence of sickle cell anemia among the Gonds, Bhils, and Santals.
So our genes tell a story of our culture and history. A great way to conclude.
Precisely. The conclusion is that this biogenetic variability, shaped by migrations, cultural practices, and local adaptations, reflects the deep evolutionary and cultural heritage of India's tribal communities.
Let's practice those haplogroups. It's a bit technical, but worth remembering. Now pause and practice saying, Andamanese tribes have unique M31 and M32 haplogroups, showing ancient isolation. Rehearse it.
In short, the biogenetic variability of Indian tribes is a rich tapestry woven from threads of ancient migrations, cultural isolation through endogamy, and adaptation to local environments.
तो दोस्तों क्या जबरदस्त डिस्कशन था. We literally traveled across India, from Jharkhand to the Andaman Islands, from ancient history to modern genetics, exploring the rich and diverse world of its tribal communities.
Absolutely. The key takeaway is the sheer diversity in culture, economy, language, and even genetics.
Artisans, seeing how culture is tied to ecology and the challenges they face. We unpacked ILO Convention 169, understanding India's stance, and then saw a brilliant example of sustainable agriculture with the Apatani. We mapped India's tribal distribution, explored the shifting cultivation debate, and decoded concepts like tribe versus scheduled tribe and youth dormitories. We also classified linguistic families, understood the problems of pastoral communities, and contrasted economic typologies from different anthropologists. Finally, we looked at the fascinating biogenetic variability that tells the story of our deep past.
Or here's a thought to leave with everyone. We've seen government policies like the Forest Rights Act and PESA Act are designed to protect tribes. But in today's rapidly globalizing world, can traditional knowledge and modern development truly coexist without one overpowering the other? Is integration always the best path? Or is respectful isolation sometimes a better choice for preserving a culture? इस पर सोचना जरूर.
A very powerful thought. अगर ये in-depth analysis पसंद आया है, तो चैनल को support करना मत भूलना. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share it with every curious friend you have. और हाँ, comments में अपना feedback जरूर देना कि आपको सबसे interesting fact कौन सा लगा. अगली बार मिलेंगे एक और exciting topic के साथ. तब तक, keep exploring and keep learning.